Is that coming up?
There we go.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, let me, sorry. Just finding my notes. My apologies, rocky start. Well, for some reason I cannot see my notes, so let me just get back to it. Okay, so for the talk today, I pick an interesting topic. It's at least for me, is orchestrating Terraform Enterprise or cloud. The idea is to automate the user onboarding or teams, projects in the different workspaces. My name is Simon Garcia. I'm a delivery consultant at Arctic. When I'm not working and coding and all that, I'm really into sports. So I play soccer. I do some BMX. Like to go for hikes with the dog and everything. So that's kind of what I do in my free time. Please, I have there my LinkedIn and GitHub if you want to connect. Happy to share some knowledge and also learn from you guys. So let's do a little bit of an introduction on this project. The idea came from like actually talking to a customer at one point where they say they had a need to be agile and keep onboarding their developers really quick without interrupting their workflow. They were like a small company, but a lot of work happening, and the developers were really quick jumping into different projects. The customer wanted to introduce a little bit more maturity and more like management around their Terraform work. So yeah, they asked me like what you can do there. This is something that for me I haven't done many times, so I decided to take a stab at it. There's probably a couple ways of doing it, but yeah, I just took a stab at it with the interconnection with GitHub. So yeah, let's go through it. So as I was mentioning, the goal of the purpose of this project was is to facilitate the management and the onboarding process of users, expedite that process. So when a new developer or new operations guy comes into the organization, we don't have to wait for maybe the app owner to onboard them into the workspaces or into Terraform Cloud. So in this case, I'm leveraging the integration with the versioning code system. So in this case, I pick GitHub, and I think for companies that have that model of infrastructure as code, they commit everything to their repos, and they are heavily into Terraform projects. I think it's a good solution or a good idea to try to expedite that process. Again, some considerations is still a work in progress and some enhancement and some fixes that I still have to do, but I hope that you guys enjoy what I'm going to showcase right now. There's some prerequisites for what I have. So of course, you need a Terraform Cloud account and an organization. You can maybe get to the point where you can automate the organization creation and all that. But there's some stuff that I just wanted to have preset. You also wanna have Terraform Cloud support VCS. In this case, the ones that are supported at GitHub, either the enterprise version and Bitbucket, GitLab, and so on. I'm using a management workspace preset already. So when I'm doing my work and my commits, it's gonna go through that management workspace and then create either the additional users, the additional workspaces or teams. It's one of those things that you're automating with Terraform, but you somehow need to have Terraform already something in place to go through the automation. Otherwise, you may be using automated through the CLI or whatnot. And then for an organization, maybe a standard of like a base team access, so you have an idea of what your naming convention is going to be for teams. If you're going to maybe have dev and prod projects, which teams you have access to those different workspaces. Benefits and some use case for this project will be, again, the expedite the onboarding of like admins, developers, for companies that really go quick through their developers, or maybe they're a task company that hire specific developers or contractors for some pieces of work. That quick turnaround of like, okay, this contractor is done, let's take him off and put the next one for the next piece of the project. It can get sometimes a little bit tedious to manage. So having some automation around that for sure will help. You maybe have a need to create Terraform projects and workspaces on the fly just for doing some testing or whatnot. So yes, you can do some of the stuff manually if the access is given, but might as well take advantage of the automation to quickly spin up a workspace and be able to do your dev or your QA, your testing, whatnot. With the automation, again, you'll be able to create your teams, manage previous teams as people go, take them out of the team and so on. The permission to the workspaces, maybe there's a new team that gets on board that is going to work on a second phase of a project, and you now want them to have access to that project or workspace, and you can do that. And finally, with the usage of the VCS integration, you can keep that as your little bit of tracking or record of what's happening, what changes are being made into your Terraform Cloud organization, as well as ensure that if you go through an approval process on GitHub, the permissions and the workspaces or whatnot that you're creating are reviewed beforehand, right? So not everyone gets like admin access right out of the bat. So the workflow that I chose and I started to develop here was to generate a pull request on that repo that will have like the variables or whatnot for the users, teams, and so on. From there, as I was mentioning, it will go through an approval process where the application owner or a manager will quickly check like the permissions and whatnot. Okay, this makes sense. This exists. So okay, it's approved to merge. Terraform will pick that up with the right configuration on the workspace. We'll pick that up the pull request and apply the changes and create all the configuration. This is kind of how it looks on a visual. You of course have the option to like commit right through the main branch or the master branch, and of course that commit would also trigger the Terraform plan and apply. For the demo purposes, I'm doing a little bit of that just to expedite, but ideally, like you want to take advantage of the approval flow. Okay, so let's go a little bit through the code. Just want to explain how I get to this demo and how to get it working. So the first part is the user and team membership. So on the right side, I have a request for like 3 new users. I specify their email address and the team they're going to be part of. My code shows, and you're going to see this along my resources. I'm just leveraging the for each and the for nested for loop to go through each of those members, grab their email address in this case, to create the membership to the org. In a second resource, I'm going to be grabbing that team value and then working with that to add it to the specific team. At the end, what we're like, if you do that through the GUI, this is done on the organization settings, and you go to users, you're going to end up with your users on the invited section until they eventually get the email and approve the invitation, create their account if they don't have one, and so on. Eventually, they will become active users. One of the difference that I saw here is once you do that from the GUI, you do have to specify a theme out of the bat. So let's say if you're create a new team plus a new user, doing it from the GUI, like it requires like a couple clicks to make sure your team exists, make sure if it doesn't create it first, and then grab the user and add it to the specific team. Then my next resource block or request will be the teams and organization permission. So I have here a request for one team. I try to use as many of the values or parameters that the resource block allows you to configure. So in this case, I have visibility, which is you can set either to secret or organization. So what that means is if it's set to secret, only the members of that group can see the actual group or team. If it's organization, any other member can see the groups as far as they have that access visibility. I'm using here a switch, and I highlighted the admin. I use it as a switch in case if I want to give some admin privileges to this team, I'll set that to true and then specify what I want to give them. So maybe I want them to be a Sentinel admin or a Workspace admin, and I can set that to true or false accordingly. This is how on the code I'm doing that. So I'm taking advantage of the dynamic block expression and the lookup functions. So what this for each is doing is basically looking for that admin flag. If it's set to false, then it's going to leave it empty. If it sets to anything else, in this case true, it's going to now apply the values from the content. So each of those sections is going to look to see if it's going to be true or false for the specific privileges. So that way, when you onboard your team, you can specify what actually should they have. Then for the team membership, now, as I mentioned before, there was a team value team value on the user configuration. So now I'm iterating through that as well and added it to the specific teams that they were just created. When it comes to those permissions, this is how it looks from the GUI, just for further explanation. So depending on what admin privileges you give, they will be able to have some of those tags. So in the GUI, it's just a simple checkbox. But that will, maybe you want to add a team that is an administrator for just the VCS settings, and that would be a use case for that. So I want to make sure I give some flexibility when this is happening, because you may have a large team that want to make sure, okay, well, only these guys can do VCS, only these guys can do Sentinel, and so on. Then we go into the Workspace Access. So on the right side, again, I have a workspace. They access like the values for that variable. One of the things I look at, okay, which team we're going to give access to which workspace. And as on this one as well, I use the access, the highlighted value there, as a flag. On this resource, you can have either fixed permissions, so your access can be read, write, plan, and apply if I'm not wrong, or run, or admin. Sorry. So that will give will give all the all the access to all the below access to that group. Now, if I put it to custom, then I can select on that workspace what that team can actually do. So perhaps I want the admin to have full access, but when it comes to the developer team, I only want them to be able to play with the variables and run and they can do an apply. But when it comes to the state file and the Sentinel, like I want to make sure, maybe I don't want them to see the Sentinel mocks, or don't want them to be able to write to the state or just read it or whatnot. So again, adding some flexibility to that permission. Similar to what I did on the teams before, I'm leveraging that dynamic block expression and the lookup function to kind of switch over those values and make sure that I can specify that extra value if needed. Otherwise, if Access becomes just admin, then I don't need to specify that extra set of parameters because it's always gonna be set or true for those. These are explained like from the GUI the permissions that are given. So for the runs, they can have read, plan, and apply. You can maybe have a group that is just set to do maintenance or maybe do some billing. In the case, and this is a stretch, but you have project managers, and they know like the project is completed, or for some reason we need to stop any work on it, and maybe there's some billing issues or whatnot. You can have that team to be able to control if the workspace gets locked or unlocked, and that way no further work can be done on that project. The other piece is the variables and the state versions. So whoever has that access can either just read the variables. Maybe you have an operation team that is there to troubleshoot, but the idea is that they don't mess with any of the variables that the developer team is working with. So they can troubleshoot and look at errors on the state, but maybe not do any changes because the developer owns a project, and that's kind of their responsibility. Finally, I have my workspace request. So on your right side, I'm adding that new workspace, and for this one, it's a lot of settings you can apply there. I picked the ones that I think are maybe they meet some housekeeping requirements. So make sure that it has a good description. There's some tags on it that identify it, as well as some functionality. So if I want to make sure any changes can trigger the workspace run, or if I need to use a specific Terraform version, I can also specify that here. Additionally to that, having this automation that allows me to perhaps connect that workspace right away to the VCS, to a repo either on GitHub or another handle. So it saves you time from. I mean, you can create it. It's pretty quick anyways on the GUI as well, that you create a workflow type workspace and you select the repo and so on. But if you already know which repo is going to go, and you can put it on a quick request and get it done, then it will expedite that creation process and ensure it's linked to the right project. There's an option even to do the auto apply or auto apply and then commit on the first on creation. So as soon as you create that workspace, if the code is ready to go, the run will automatically happen, and right there the user will have its project running. So let's say I have a developer say, hey, I already have the code ready to create a GCP instance in this case. I just needed you put it on Terraform, run it, and it's good to go. So this would be a use case where the guy doesn't have to worry about what's on Terraform Cloud or how to provision. It's just, hey, here's my repo, puts the request. Once everything gets approved and added, eventually he just gets a notification of, hey, here, your repo, your project is ready. Go and check your resources. This one is a little bit more bigger, but this is what I came up with as well. So similar to the other ones, we're using that for each loop to iterate through the workspaces, and then the dynamic blocks to set the VCS repo. Perhaps I don't want it to have a repo, and I'm going to be doing some manual work on it or whatnot. Then I can set that to none, and the repo won't take place. And it won't get configured. So let's do some demo time. Let me see if I can get out of here and show my browser. So I think here's the whole screen. So let me start quickly. Okay. So I have here just that management workspace that I was mentioning. I already have my org with some basic, well, the VCS configured. On the settings, I'm going to show you there's no teams yet, no users. So the next step is me going through the request via Git. As I mentioned, in this case, I'm just gonna simply do the commit to the main branch just for timing purposes. So I'm just doing that on the side. Doing my commit now. And push. So we should see shortly that Terraform is going to pick that. There you go. It's going to pick that planning or that commit. I'm going to go to runs just to show you how that looks. One thing to note when I came out with this is I'm not using any variables on the workspace, but I'm leveraging the auto TFRs. So that way all the variables are set in that file and they get committed. It gives you that option to review everything that is happening from GitHub and not really have to like check the variables or their values on the workspace itself. Another way that I was thinking of doing this was through a secondary workspace, more call it like maybe a worker workspace that I will use to set my variables on the management workspace and so on. So that way my workspace in Terraform Cloud will have that documentation. That worked. The only thing that I found there is, I'm sorry, I'm just taking a going off track here for a minute. But the issue that I found there is for run triggers, when I set this guy to, okay, maybe source yourself from that other worker repo, regardless of me setting this to auto apply, I have to come here manually. I found out kind of a little bit late in the game, but I stay with this current set. But that will be another option. Not sure if at some point this may change, but yeah, it's something that is also available there. When you do it that way, you do have to come back to your management workspace and approve that plan. So let's look at the plan. So right now on my auto TF bars, I have a couple users that I'm creating. There's some teams as well and their membership and 2 workspaces. So we can now let's look at that in order. So I now have 4 invites. And sorry, I pick on HashiTalksCorp.com, fake corp, but just for this demo purposes works. And then I have my teams. Right now it says 0 members, but if I draw in, I'll see that the member is attached to it. Also, the right permissions were set according to what I had on my TFRs as we saw in that request. And finally, I have the workspaces. One thing to note here is you can also go as far as automating your VCS integration and picking a different handle or that you want to check for your repos. In this case, I use my own for these 2 workspaces. And then I wanted to see tags. I wanted to see things like that as I was showing. So it's all there. Nothing will happen on these workspaces because they're empty. I only have a README on it. But that's kind of the gist. For me, it was a really really fun project getting it to there. A couple headaches, but yeah, I really enjoy it. But yeah, that's kind of the demo for now. There's a couple things that I'm working on it right now. Can't remember exactly what I changed, but on my permissions, I can only have assign one team per workspace. That's on my code for sure that I need to fix because initially I had it working. And the other one is I'm having some dependencies issues when I do the destroy. So it comes to either destroy the whole thing or destroy the ones that are dependent. Let's say if I have a developers that are members of the developer team, then I got to make sure I delete all the stuff altogether. Yeah, that's it for now. So let me get back to the slides. Perfect, that's up. Yeah, so I'll be on the chat if there's any questions. I hope you enjoyed this one and it's somehow useful for anybody out there. Yeah, thank you so much for listening and for your attention. And if you want to connect again, that's my GitHub and LinkedIn address.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. And that was a great session. And thanks for also giving the shout out to Sal at the bottom of your thank you slide for hugs and learn and I think discuss for the community. If there's things you're looking for, those are great places to check it out for resources from us. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, Simon.